Thank you for joining. So today is our first lunch and learn of the UCD series. So we've got 6 sessions coming up over the next couple of months. I believe Elise is going to share some details on the rest of them at the end of the session. But today is about how to use research to make improvements to your service. We've also got a kind of blog article to follow up with this as well. So we'll be sharing a link to that at the end of the session as well. Before we get stuck in, I just wanted to introduce myself. So my name's Gabi Mitchem-Evans and I'm a senior user researcher at CDPS. I started my user research career back in a UX agency. So I was working for clients such as Girl Guide, Met Office, Dyson, working on leading their research projects. And more recently, I've been working in central government. So I was working at NHSX, so working on making policies more user-centred. And I also worked at DFE as well, so working on a data transformation programme there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is @GabbyM_E. So we're going to be using Manti today. I'm just going to pass over to Jem and she's going to set this up for us.
Okay, so if you go to menti.com and go and pop in the code 67170657, I'll share my screen and that code will come up. We want to ask you 3 questions, which are, so what extent do you agree with the following statements? So if you go to menti.com and use the code, and then we can start to see how people are feeling in terms of their confidence. Got some middle of the roads. I understand how to get started with research in my organisation, so that's a little bit lower. Oh, things are jumping around, which is what we like to see. Brilliant. I understand why user research is needed. Great. It's a bit of a mixed bag. So what we're going to do is run this poll again at the end just to see whether Gabby's presentation has hit the mark or not. So good luck, Gabby. You'll be amazing.
Thank you. Let's hope so. Great. I'll start sharing my screen again. Great. So today I'm going to be talking about what user research is. So I think we've got a mixture of people on the call. So some of you might be more familiar than others, but I think it would be good just to recap and make sure we're on the same page. Then I'll move on to why we need user research and also how to do research. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end as well. So to kick us off, what is user research? So I've got a video here which just really sets in context where user research fits in the bigger service design piece. So it's about 3 minutes long, so I'll just play that for us to start us off.
What is service design? I've been thinking about this for a while, and I recently discovered a brilliant quote by Mark Futai that I think sums it up perfectly. When you have 2 coffee shops right next to each other, each selling the exact same coffee for the exact same price, service design is the reason you go into one coffee shop and not the other. So let's play that out in a little scenario. Coffee shop A decide they want a mobile app. So they put a team full of people together to work on it for a couple of months before delivering it to their customers. The customers download the app only to find it's got nothing that they need. Now let's look at coffee shop B. Coffee shop B put the customer at the heart of the experience. They talk to them. They do some immersive research and really get to know what the customer's doing before, during, and after their coffee. They can map this out on a customer journey where they identify the highs and lows of the experience and uncover some service opportunities and start to explore solutions. The team then start to speak to other people from around the business. They speak to the colleagues in store and understand what their day looks like. They speak to the founder to look back at the original vision of the coffee shop, as well as the marketing team and the suppliers too. Once they have all of these people together, they can run a workshop or a series of workshops where they can identify the real business objective and exactly what they want to achieve. They can start to design some concepts and test them with the customers they now have a relationship with. They can do a tech analysis and plot everything on a blueprint that documents all of the support systems necessary to bring these concepts to life. With all this, they can create their North Star vision, all resulting in a mobile app full of features that customers love. But it doesn't stop there. They've also identified that colleagues need a tablet application to help them deal with the extra flow of traffic in store, and the payment system needs updating so all three can work in harmony. They might design a colleague training and engagement program and redesign their store to optimize the physical experience too, whilst also looking at how they talk about themselves socially, possibly even introducing some new product lines. These are what we call the front stage experiences. But in order for it to all come together, we must look at the backstage too. Here you will find the back-end systems that drive all the digital propositions, key metrics that we measure ourselves by, learn from, and iterate upon the services, as well as the CRM system and some delivery partners. So, service design is about three things. One, customer-centric. It's about putting the customer at the heart of everything you do, and only then will you create services people love. Two, co-creation. It's about exploring and designing these concepts together. As a result, it will ensure services are both technically feasible and business viable. Three, holistic. It's about building interdependent, interrelated experiences that all connect with people on an emotional level. That way, it will create services that scale beyond the original idea. To round it all off, let's revisit Mark's work. Service design is not just what makes you walk into one coffee shop and not the other. It's the reason you keep coming back and tell all your friends about it. What is services?
So hopefully that sets in context where user research comes in and how important it is to inform your bigger service design. But just to follow up with a bit more detail. So user research is about the people who use your product or service. We're trying to have empathy with our users and putting ourselves in their shoes. And if we understand their feelings, motivations and behaviours, then we can design things that will really meet their needs. And I think there's a bit of a misconception commonly around who our users actually are. I think we have a good understanding that the general public and service users are our users, but sometimes we forget about the target service users, so potentially the people that aren't maybe using your service at the minute, but the people that you'd like to use your service. We've also got policymakers, call centre staff and stakeholders. So there's lots of different people, and it could actually be anybody that uses your service. It's not necessarily just the kind of obvious users. And what we're trying to do is understand user behaviour in context so that we can discover problems. So where possible, we always want to understand that wider context where it's being used. And I think a good example is, so a project that we've got going on at the minute has been working in hospitals. So we're really working with nurses to make sure they understood what problems they were experiencing. And I think if they'd just done remote interviews and maybe not understood that context as well, then they really would have missed a trick. So what they've done is gone into hospitals and really understand that environment that they're working in, and then they've actually been able to understand that a lot more deeply than if they'd just asked nurses what problems they were experiencing. And what that allows us to do is design ideas to meet users' needs. So the whole point of research is to make things better. And what we're trying to do is have each round of research having a focus. It's quick, it's actionable, and it's something has to change as a result. And what we're not talking about is a long drawn out process which has, robust data sets. We really just want to get enough confidence about what we're designing to move on and make decisions around that. So why do we need user research? Well, you're not your user, and I think this is something that GDS explained really well. And I really like this graphic on the right because I think it just really sets the tone of what we're trying to achieve here. So, when we're doing research, we're trying to empathise with our users and really put ourselves in their shoes. And if we don't put ourselves in their shoes, then we might end up designing the wrong thing. So what you can see here is that the poor baby's not got a very nice view of this mobile. Clearly whoever designed this wasn't really thinking of the baby. They were probably thinking about their own perspective. So what you can see is that the stakeholders love it because they have a nice view from a different perspective. But what we haven't done is consider the baby. So I think it just demonstrates how important it is to actually think of the person who's going to be using the service. And what this allows us to do is design based on evidence, not assumptions. So when we speak to the users of a service, we learn what their needs are and can have confidence in what we're designing for them. And we all bring our own assumptions and bias to our daily work. So that could be through our ethnicity, our gender, our age, and lots of different things. But what user research really helps us to do is challenge those assumptions and just make sure that we're designing for the users and not ourselves. And on top of this, it also saves us time and money in the long run and avoids reputational damage. So what we're trying to do is adapt to the changing needs as we discover them along the way. And also it helps us to avoid creating solutions that might cause costly redesigns down the road, and just really make sure that we're designing the right thing from the start and that we can have confidence in what we're doing. Okay, the next section is about how you can do research yourself. So on the left, we've got an ideal setup, and this might involve a user research embedded in an agile team. And for anyone that doesn't know what an agile team is, we're talking about having a multidisciplinary team with lots of digital roles in it. So that might include a delivery manager, a service designer, a product manager, and lots of different roles as well, really working in that multidisciplinary agile way. But what we also think is okay is having a non-user researcher wanting to make their service more user-centred and involving their team in the process. So we acknowledge in Wales that in a lot of scenarios you might not have the ideal setup, but what we do want to move to is making our services more user-centred, and obviously we need to do something to get there. However, what I do want to flag, as a user researcher, we do have lots of ethical and GDPR constraints in place to make sure that we're doing diverse and ethical research. And as CDPS, we're here to support you to get the most from your research. We've got lots of resources and guidance that we're working on, and we'd be more than happy to share to make sure that any research that you do is ethical. So what we would say is focusing on secondary research is the way to go to start off, and then you can do small and safe primary research if you don't have access to a user researcher, just to make sure that those things have been considered. So when we talk about ethical research, we're talking about saving participant data in a secure way. We're talking about making sure that the participant has been considered in a safe way. So you can't be doing research in a public space that maybe they won't feel safe to talk to you in, and things like that. So there's lots of considerations to be made. I also wanted to just point out that we're building a community of practice, which is really exciting. It's very in its infancy at the moment, but we'd love you to join if this is something that you're thinking of doing. So we're going to share some more details on that at the end of the presentation as well. So I'm going to share 5 tips with you now on how you can do research. And the first one is starting small and user focused. So I've touched on this a little bit already, but we recognise that starting is actually the hardest part, but just starting is amazing, and I'm sure you'll gain momentum through doing that. And what we would say is to work with your team to identify what problem you're trying to solve for users. So if you are going to do some research and you want it to be user focused, then really just think about what problem you're trying to solve before getting started. I'd also encourage you to define some objectives before you get started, just to make sure that you've got a nice clear focus and you don't waste time, and you can stay focused on one specific topic. And I'd say about 3 to 5 objectives is probably the sweet spot for that. And when we talk about problem, we might think of something like this. So our customer call centre receives 500 calls a week about signing up to our training course, which takes too much time and delivers a bad experience. And some example objectives might be around understanding why users call the call centre, and identifying opportunities to reduce the amount of users calling the call centre as well. And just to note on there, we're not solutionising, so we're not saying understand how we can get them to use the website instead. We're just really trying to understand the problem before we move into ideas that might solve those problems. Tip number 2 is to use information that already exists. So I think it's really important to learn from existing knowledge. I mean, probably a lot of the subject areas we're looking at are not new. There'll be lots of things that you can include in your work to learn from before going out and doing your own primary research. And we really don't want to duplicate what already exists as well. I mean, if stuff exists, then it's going to make our lives easier. So let's use what we have already. And some of the things that might be useful is looking at relevant reports and papers. So there might be news articles, there might be academic reports, just really try and capture what exists in that space already. You could also ask your customer service colleagues to share their call log data or their complaints data. This can be a really powerful way to understand what users are complaining about and what their frustrations are. You could also have a look at surveys and feedback forms. So, you know, this is not a new way of collecting data. A lot of the time it can be used in more of a market research capacity, but if you do have anything like that, then it could be really useful to look at that as well. And probably one of my favourite ways of understanding users' kind of problems and frustrations is through social media channels. So I think this is something that people don't necessarily think about, but actually, you know, think where somebody's going to be their most unfiltered, frustrated self, and it's probably social media. So have a look at your organisation's Twitter feeds and their YouTube or blog posts, because people do tend to comment kind of their true thoughts on those as well. And then probably a less tangible one, but still really useful, is just referencing kind of conversations or anecdotal evidence that you've got from colleagues or users. So I'm sure you will have picked up on comments around the office that people say, oh, I've heard, you know, this doesn't work very well, or I've heard about this. And I think although it's not like a tangible report or something that you can lean on as evidence, it is still evidence in a sense, and it could be enough of a hunch that you can go and explore it further. Tip number 3 was to learn from others. So this, as a title, sounds a bit vague, but essentially the public sector is full of so many talented people doing amazing work. And by researching what is being done elsewhere, you can learn from their experiences and maybe piggyback on what hasn't worked and learn from it. So what I would recommend under this one is to read blogs and week notes written by public sector teams. So we're really lucky, actually. Lots of people these days do work very openly, and they do talk about what has gone well, but also what hasn't gone well. And I think it's a really good way to just learn from other people in that sense. You could also try and connect with people in similar roles on your social networks, communities of practice, and also professional networks, and also collaborate with others on shared problems. So this is something we're trying to promote at CDPS. So Joe Goodwin, our head of UCD, recently did a cost of living crisis workshop with lots of local authorities in Wales, and they were experiencing lots of problems with their cost of living content. And this was a shared problem amongst them. This wasn't something that one local authority was struggling with. It was, you know, Wales-wide essentially. So getting everyone together to collaborate on that was really powerful, and we can see that that is a really great way to solve problems. And then lastly, also to work in the open. So, you know, starting to write week notes and blog posts would really help kind of share your ideas and challenges and invite that kind of feedback from others as well. And just on that, these are two really good examples of this. So on the left, we've got some week notes from a team at Natural Resources Wales. This is the team we work with at CDPS, and they're already getting stuck in writing their own week notes. And it can be really quick and easy, but they're already seeing the benefit of doing this. So it's great to see. And then there's also a dedicated blog from Essex County Council on the right, talking about their service transformation. So they have been sharing really candidly, kind of, you can see even there they've got their data that they're sharing, which is really great to see. And you can learn from their reflections. We're not starting from scratch most of the time. These people have done what you've done, so it's great to learn from them. Tip number 4 is to always use more than one source of insight. So anybody that's ever done a literature review will probably recognise this, and it's very much the same in user research. So by reviewing data from different sources, we're really gaining that wider picture and widening our perspective. And by relying solely on one method, you might actually be biasing the insight you're collecting. So I'd always recommend trying to capture at least 2 different sources. And methods should be selected based on what's needed for the research problem as well. I just wanted to include this slide to show that if you were to work with a user researcher, they'd probably build you a methodology. So by selecting multiple, so here we've got interviews, survey and contextual research, you're going to get a much wider picture of what's going on in the service. So interviews will give you rich qualitative insight. Surveys will give you quantitative insight and maybe a bit more of the scale of a problem, and then contextual would help you understand that deeper context setting as well. So yeah, always remember to try and look at more than one source as well. And then my last tip is learn, make, reflect. And this is something that we've been exploring at CDPS as a bit of an alternative to the typical GDS agile framework of discovery, discovery, alpha, beta, live. And it's just a simplified way, which maybe feels a bit more user-friendly. So research should always be continuous and not just at the start of the project. So we would recommend doing research throughout, keep learning and iterating as you're going along. And typically you're going to start with learning about a problem area. So this is where all of your secondary research will come in. You want to understand what the problems are, speak to your users, and then you're going to put it into the make part. So this is where you'll make something to try and solve that problem. And then you'll test it and reflect on what went well and what didn't. And what you'll see here is that goes straight back into the learn. So this is an iterative cycle, and the aim is to continue as you go along. And again, something I mentioned earlier, we're always aiming to do enough research to spot patterns and give you confidence in your next decision. So that's the end of my tips, and I'm going to hand back over to Jem now to see if that helped.
Yeah, so go back to menti.com and enter that code again, and you'll see exactly the same questions we asked you earlier, and we can have a little look to see if those scores have gone up. Things coming through. Let me just share my screen. Brilliant. Everyone's edging closer to the strongly agree, so
Good.
excellent. Ah, there we are. I'll stop sharing.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Let me just share my screen again. So we're going to take questions now, and then we've got a couple more slides after that as well. I'm conscious we don't have long left. We've only got 5 minutes, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, shoot away. No questions. I'll assume I did a good job then. So we are building a user research community of practice, which I mentioned earlier on, and we'd really love to invite you to join us if you're a user researcher or an aspiring user researcher. We have a user research email, so please do send us a message if you're interested in joining. We're hoping to launch this in March, but we are doing some research to kind of scope that. So if you'd like to be a part of that, please just drop us a message and we'll send you over some details. And over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Gabby. That was brilliant. I just wanted to, before we went, I just wanted to say that this is not just a one-off. We've got a whole host of sessions for you to get your teeth stuck into. And so we got another one in a fortnight's time, which is going to be on testing. So testing to keep your service relevant and optimized. So if you haven't already signed up, it'd be great if you can get yourself signed up for that session. Trying to run these every fortnight. You see the last couple of bunch together, just so we don't hit the I think it's the Easter holiday period, but it'd be brilliant to keep you along on our journey that we're taking people through on user-centered design. We've also got in between these sessions, lean coffee sessions. And now if you're not familiar with lean coffee, these are agendaless sessions, and which we you come with your problems, you come with your challenges, you come with anything that you're struggling with. If it's something that's happened, you're taking away this resource today, and there's something that you just want to chat about with us, then those lean coffee sessions are perfect to come along and to have a chat with us, and we can troubleshoot them together in a group setting. So we've got one of those first lean coffee sessions that's taking place next Tuesday. So I think Elise, you'll see there, has just posted into the chat there, Eventbrite link to our CDPS Eventbrite, which will have all the details of the sessions in there and how you sign up. So yeah, thanks for coming along today, and yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next session.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Diolch.